All right, this video focuses on central tendency. It has three parts. We'll start off with some definitions. First, what is central tendency? Well, central, we're going to, it's a class of measures that we deal with in statistics. These are descriptive statistics that describe the center, the middle of the distribution. So we're trying to find what score falls right at the middle of the distribution. Why is that important? Well, that tendency, that inclination for that score to be, for the most scores to be in the middle, or the majority of the scores to be toward the middle, allows us to describe aspects of the distribution. So we're going to describe it numerically. I think before looking at graphs, we could say, oh, well, yeah, most people are between this and this point. But here we're getting a little more precise. We're putting a number on things. And measures of central tendency are commonly called the average, but we'll see that the average is not a precise term. It's quite imprecise, as there are several ways to define average. We'll see that there's actually three different things that could all be correctly called average, and they're all computed differently. So looking at a graph like this, as I mentioned, you can get some sense of where the average score is, probably somewhere between 475 and 500. You get a sense of the range of values, but you don't get a sense of where that exact point is. So we're talking about the middle of the distribution here. We'll use a small example with quiz grades. If you took a quiz in a class, if I gave you a quiz and handed it back the next day and it just had a number on it, what are some of the questions you might ask? Well, I think a lot of you are inclined to ask, what's the highest score? What's the lowest score? What's the average score? Why do we want to know the average? Because it kind of gives you some sense of where you fall in relation to people. Here's just a graph of quiz scores. If you got your quiz back and it had a 9 on it, and this was a histogram of the quiz scores, you'd probably be pretty happy with where you scored. If, however, you scored a 4, you'd think, oh, well, I did worse than most people. So we get some sort of sense of what the average score is from histograms. Now, unfortunately, there's three different ways that we can, three different things that can all be accurately termed an average. And they all yield very different information. If our distribution happens to follow that normal shape that we talked about, the mean, the median, and the mode are all going to be roughly the same or roughly the same. However, when we deal with distributions of real data, they're often not normal. As an example, in the quiz grade graph that I showed you, here are the different averages. There's the mean, which is the arithmetic average. We'll have our first formula on that in the next set of slides. The median is another measure of average. It's the middle score. Half of your scores are going to be above, half of your scores are going to be below. And then finally, the last one is called the mode, and that's simply the score that appears the most. It's the most common score. All right.